Welcome to Cards of Insight, where we discuss all things tarot. And I'm Greg, and I live in London.
Anna here, joining you all the way from sunny Brazil.
Susan here. I'm here in Canada.
And Pavlina, greetings from London, UK.
And we are all tarot readers.
Yeah, and in your experience, Susan, what are the popular questions or the questions that you get the most usually?
Well, they're looking forward to Valentine's Day, and they're not getting this invite to celebrate. So they're automatically going to, is that person cheating on me? Or don't they love me anymore? Or are they going to propose to me? So you've got all those questions and anxieties coming, and they're just really anxious, and they want to know before D-Day what to expect.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I also think that it does depend on how long they've been in that relationship, because there are cases where the person just met a guy and they say, I don't know, how is this guy? I mean, is he serious about things? Is he, he's just playing with me? He's using me? So it's a kind of a reinforcement, I think. People look for that in cards as well. See, am I on the right track? Or is this guy just let's say, a loser? Am I just wasting my time on somebody who is not interested in me? That can be the case as well, if they just met or if it's something recent.
And if they've been in a longer relationship, like after that 3-month mark, they could be 6 months involved, a year involved. And so the bloom of, excitement is gone. And so they're thinking, okay, so the bloom of the relationship is past. If it's past that 3 months, and now they're into 6 months, a year, or maybe even longer, and they're not feeling as comfortable because they're thinking, where am I in this relationship? Because they don't feel the excitement anymore. Not that it isn't there, but it's now every day. So now they're looking at, okay, why can't we recapture what we had in the beginning? So that's where time comes into play, and that's where you start to realize, okay, is this romance going someplace?
What about, married couples that have been together for more than 3 months or 6 months, or years, for example? Do you get that too? Just people who have been together for, let's say, 30 years, and all of a sudden they say, oh, he's been acting strange.
And maybe they've fallen out of, on Valentine's Day, getting the roses or any flowers, or even getting a card, and it's treated like an everyday event. And now that person is acting even more dismissive of the relationship. So yeah, they're thinking, well, why don't I have that magic anymore? What's going on here? Do I have something to be concerned about, other than they seem to be treating this like a Monday to Friday, an ordinary day. And I mean, that may be fine. That may be okay, but it may not be okay. Because obviously, if that person is coming to see us, they're saying, well, where's that magic? What's happening here? Is there something to be concerned about?
Yeah. I think the asked question is she or he cheating on me, right?
Yes, big one.
Yeah, this is very difficult to approach because it's a very sensitive matter, because you have to understand first dynamic of the relationship and what he and she expects, what's going on generally. It could be as well their family setup, children, work. So this question is kind of complex to answer. How do you approach this question?
Well, I would want to find out is he actually cheating because they or she, because that's just making an assumption because they might be wrong and you're trying to read on something that's not true. I think the best thing is to just find out if they are actually having an affair.
And get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you could ask if they weren't sure, then you could ask the cards. But sometimes, they may not be sure themselves. Or they might just be paranoid or something or
Yeah.
Yeah,
possessive.
yeah. Asking the person looking for a reading, why do you think that is the case? Why do you think, what has been giving you those clues? I mean, what changed? And then they will give you some context, because I think when you work with relationships, context is really important. She might say, well, he has been coming late from work. Anything else? Oh, he's been really crabby lately. So you could read on that. Why is that happening?
Yeah, the change of habits. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, he's been coming home late because there's been extra stress at work and he's crabby because he's stressed and tired.
And that you could check on the cards.
Yeah.
It could be as well she, because I get questions from men as well about cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the question has to be asked, is the question who's asking the question, are they obsessive with the partner? Are they controlling as well? You can sometimes see it in the card as well. It's very difficult to approach as well.
Yeah, because are they being very possessive?
Yeah.
Pavlina mentioned the word, the complicated one, obsession. You will get some people who ask the same question about their boyfriend or lover or whatever a gazillion times, and they expect the answer to be different, and that's something that we have to handle very carefully.
So do you have any spread recommendation for the love readings to start with?
It would depend what they're really looking for. So I would do a little bit of digging and then you find out that they're in a relationship. And then so you'd find out, what they need to do to spice up the relationship. Or is this person actually wanting to have an affair? And then the question becomes is, do they want to have an affair? And then it becomes more about morals and ethics. Is, do you want to be their spy for them to see if they're going to get caught out on an affair? So I would try and encourage, like, what could you make that relationship work? But that's none of my business either. It's a tough one, really. So I would try to do a reading to see what she needs to do to improve things. But if that's not what she wants, then I would look on a relationship to see how it would go, to see if she has a chance or anything. But I would try not to, at the same time, try not to help her do it. It's difficult. Moral and ethically, it becomes a bit difficult for me.
Yeah. I think as well it depends if when people are in relationship, are they in relationships 3 months, 6 months, then yes. If they just met, if they just came back together as well.
And if that person has been cheating on them before, if they have a history.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Because I think people that come and they ask about an affair already have an answer somewhere in their gut. That's what I've generally seen if I'm reading on that. That person is, because to me, if you're going to ask about that question and looking for a yes, no on it, you're going to have to handle the result. And I would be concerned as to whether or not, depending, with that person and I'm talking to them, if they're asking me to answer that question, and to me it's like, okay, are they going to, they look for that confirmation and now they may have to make a decision. Are they going to confront the person, end the relationship, whatever? And this is where I feel as a reader, you have to take the responsibility of okay, how thorough am I going to be addressing this issue with them? Are they able to respond to whatever I tell them? in a healthy way.
You also have to ask yourself, is it any of our business what goes on behind closed doors? They've come there asking for help. And the mistake that people can make is like, just because they're coming through and asking a question and they're in a relationship, and you think, well, if they're in a relationship and they're asking me a relationship question, that's a big red flag. So straight away, I'm already making an assumption or a judgment that there's a reason they'd be asking me. Maybe they're really genuine and they want to make things work better in the current relationship that they've already got. Who am I to decide that they shouldn't be having an affair? I don't know. It's a very, I think it's delicate situation for me, and to make assumptions, like I said before, is not good to make assumptions on people either. And I just try to help, and obviously take the best route or advice that I think would help them.
Yes, I think toughest questions I was asked was about the religious differences, when each of them they had different religious background, and the questions asked was about their families, how they will approach it, what they're supposed to do about their religious beliefs as well, how the marriage will work. It's a very difficult topic as well, religion. Obviously, as well, we have a same sex relationship as well. The questions about
How the family will accept it.
yes,
Long distance relationships are also complicated. I think in any case, we should avoid the questions like, is something? Or, is he interested in me? Or I think we should go more on the what and how. What can I do to, attract this person more? Or what is that person interested in? Or how can I make myself more, I don't know, attractive or whatever, instead of having a yes or a no, because there's so many things involved in a relationship. A person is not just, two people are not just together. They have their families, they have friends, they have their culture, they have their background, they have their traumas. I mean, it's a universe. You have two universes getting together, and you cannot just say yes or no. You have to investigate what goes on and and help. I think the idea of relationships, when we do readings on relationships, is to give the person that leaves the table tools to make their lives better, happier, and more productive. I think the yes or a no is not the purpose. I wouldn't see it as the purpose of the reading.
agree.
Any simple spreads that you use?
Like you could probably start with just, very basic 3 cards and decide what in those 3 cards what you're going to ask.
Would you go free flow, or would you assign each card a meaning, each position a meaning?
I guess it would depend on the first question, like, it would be a case like if, "Is he cheating on me?" kind of question. It could be, "What is really happening at this point in the relationship?" Like, break it, like, and decide, okay, what has been happening in the past, what is now, and what is in the future.
So like a past, present, and future.
Yeah, because it tells you, okay, what has gone on before. Like it could be this was a wonderful, wonderful relationship, or it was never, the beginning of it was really not good. What is happening currently? Well, obviously that tells you, their state of mind and why they're here, why they're here with you. And then what are the possibilities for the future once they've had this reading, is it's like, okay, this may be relieving that pressure of stress, depending on what that card is, or what gives them some sort of idea of, okay, this is what I need to do in order to work forward. And that's would tell you whether or not you need to go into a different type of more complex reading.
You could also start from the problem. if the person says there has been, the relation, instead, I like the past, present, and future because you see the progression of the relationship and what changed and what didn't change. But you could also start with the problem itself. You start with the problem, what's going on with the relationship, and then you ask for the cause of it. Why is that happening? And then you can get 2, 3, or even 4 cards as possible solutions to help with that cause, to help with that difficult situation or challenge. You can propose solutions and work. I think it's important that you work that with the person you're reading for, because they may give again context that will help you see how one card or the other applies to the situation. For example, a 6 of swords. If a person doesn't give you any context whatsoever, that could be a long distance relationship, right? There could be physical distance between them, not necessarily emotional distance, but
Yeah.
physical distance. So I think once you present the cards, it's important participation of the client to give you more thing to work on, more information to work on.
And it also could be a family issue where one or the other is not welcomed by the other's family, which automatically creates a problem in the relationships with the other, because you're trying to work, because you're trying to work on an issue, and the family isn't welcoming that other person into the relationship.
I remember once I had met a gal and she asked me what's the issue between me and my boyfriend. I got a card was 10 of swords. I told her, well, number one, you both speak different languages and you are from completely different backgrounds. And that was the issue, but she obviously saw in 10 of swords like a disaster. She, it was a disaster. No, it was about long distance and language.
The 10, you mean the 10 of
Yeah,
swords? Yeah.
yeah, 10 of swords.
I've had a friend that had that. They were two different cultures, and also language was a barrier, and distance was a barrier, if you can imagine that one.
Wow.
Uh, but you're reminding me of that, because I still remember it was like he traveled in the job, and then they also had a language, they spoke different languages. His family was a different culture, and was not welcoming necessary of her culture. They wanted him to get involved with someone from their culture. So it was very difficult, especially if you talking to one another to try and work out issues. It's like, you can't even speak the same language. So it's like it makes building a relationship so much more difficult, as well as the distance factor.
Something that and Pavlina mentioned, the 10 of swords is my most hated card in the deck.
Yes.
all, it's very important too, because it's so emotionally charged. Reading for relationships, people are so fragile. They're so vulnerable sometimes when they come to you. We have to be very careful how we approach some cards that may show up, like the Tower, like the 10 of swords, like death. I mean, and explain that in the case that Pavlina just mentioned, the 10 of swords was not that somebody was going to die or that the relationship was over. It was, but the visual input can be very dramatic and traumatic. So we have to really be careful to explain. I don't usually like to explain where I see what I see and how I get my intuitive flashes. But when a card like that shows up, I think I have to, make it clearer that that's not necessarily the end. That's not necessarily a catastrophe coming to them.
And if somebody asks me a question, for example, about having an affair, and I get one of them cards up, like you mentioned, the Tower or a Death card, or Three of Cups is nice, because when they're having an affair, there's going to be two people that's affected in the relationship. That's the one they're currently with, and then the one they're having an affair with. So when the Tower card comes out, who's it going to be devastating for? The current partner and and them, or their new partner and them. So when they ask that question, I find I need to ask two questions: how it's going to go on both sides. I tend to call it a triangular relationship. When they do ask, I tend to ask, then I have to ask two questions. Yes.
Well, what about the Three of Swords?
Mm.
Yeah, heartache for who?
Yeah, and that to me would either, like if you're doing, that would depend on where that card is positioned. Because if it's positioned at the beginning, that could say this is where it's at right now, or where it has been, and where is it now, and where is it going to? Or if it's positioned at the third position, it's basically saying, well, the relationship could be ending right as a result of what's
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
Or in the middle, it's like it's happening right now.
So you have to have the question clear in your mind because there's three people there, right?
You're right.
So say for example Bob or Sue, right? Let's say Bob's having an affair. There's three people there. Who's going to get upset? Bob, Bob's wife, or Bob's mistress? So that three of swords could represent any three of them or two of them. So that's why I have to be sort of clear when I ask that question. I have to ask about them separately.
You know, if you look at the Marseille Lovers card, that says everything what you described because you have three people there and the person's supposed to, there's a choice. You choose me, you know, or choose me, right or left or middle. It's a different from the Rider-Waite deck because on the Rider-Waite deck you have two people, but in Marseille you've got three.
Yeah, so it's okay. So it can depend on your deck as well. You see.
Yeah.
So for me, if I got the three of hearts, I would have three positions: one for the partner, one for the querent, because the querent is actually the main person in the question, and then one for the one they're having an affair with. So there'd be the three card structure, like was mentioned earlier.
Mm.
So on the left, because I read from left to right, would be the partner they're with now. Would be the partner with now. The one in the middle would be the person asking the question, and then the one on the right hand side, or the cards at least on the right hand side, would be about the new relationship. And then if that three of swords fell to the left, I would say that the partner is going to be devastated, the ex partner, over this whole thing. But if you saw like a three of cups, they'd say, "Hey, your partner's grateful this has happened." So yeah, for me it would be important that it would have to be a position would be important for me in a question like that because they're in a relationship already.
So, Greg, how would you approach the question if, for example, the third party comes to you for the reading, you know, because the partner is married and they want to know if the partner will leave them, leave the wife or husband, you know, how would you approach this in tarot reading?
You mean if they had an affair, their partner would leave them, or if their partner's
No,
just going to
it's
leave
a
them?
mistress would come or, you know, mistress or,
Okay, then again, right, to clear my conscience and to get rid of biases, it's none of my business if she wants to have an affair or not, whether I think that's right or wrong. It's not my business. So I would have to clear that up in my mind first. Then I would structure the question the same with three positions, but I would concentrate. The focus would be more. Then I wouldn't actually include her new relationship. I wouldn't have to include it. I would just need to ask about her and then or him and the current partner and see how that goes. And then I would know, oh, he or she's they're going to find out, or they're not going to find out, or they're not going to care. You could see things like that. And then I would use the other side to see what type of person they'll find, or how to find that person. But I would still have it in the same structure in my mind, the positions of them. On the left is the current relationship, and then on the right is the new relationship, or it's going to be because it's either in the future or it's happening now. It would be on the right. And obviously, then that meets in the middle, which makes sense visually.
Would that be a yes or no question for you?
It is like a yes or no question, but I could just go, "Are you going to get caught?" and draw a card and say yes, but well, like when? Well, for me, generally, when I ask a yes or no question, it likes to give me detail. It sort of tells me why.
Another question that is frequently asked is, you know, is he going to marry me or should I marry him or her? So would you do a bigger spread? Because there's many different bigger spreads.
Depending on time. So if I've got a lot of time and I've got a lot of questions, then I'd probably do a much bigger one, like a Celtic cross, because then I could ask like why the person is having an affair, what they need to do to find a new partner, or why it was not going right in within the relationship. The small one I did was more for a no, yes or no. For a bigger one, you can really go into detail and find out why. So, for example, if they wanted to have an affair, we could just dig and say, where could they find this person, or what they need to do or avoid doing, or why they can't find somebody, or how it would possibly go if they found somebody, or even how it would go with their current relationship if they were having an affair. So, for those questions, I definitely have a much larger spread, yes. And then tailor the question accordingly.
One direction I was thinking of is like looking at the person that you're reading for and also looking at the other person and asking specific questions because they may have two different very expectations about what they want from a relationship. And that may, like, for example, sexuality, like, what do they want in a sexual relationship that, and the other person may want them to be more interesting or experimental, whatever the case may be.
Because who's the best person to ask them, right? The other person,
Right.
right? That question.
Yeah, and I think when you divide up or try and look at both sides of the equation, you're getting a much broader view of their relationship as a couple. And that may even be helping that you're the one querying, what exactly they haven't thought about with that other person. Like they may not understand that they're really bogged down in work and they're not understanding that they may be complaining about it, but they're not seeing the complete picture of where that person is at the moment, that they have the work pressures and maybe other pressures on them, family pressures that they're just not seeing. They're maybe so focused on themselves, they're not seeing their partner in any kind of clarity.
Yeah, I think if you show it when you're talking about relationships, if you show the other side to the person asking the question, it helps them see something through their eyes as well. That's what you're saying, right? I mean, what are they seeing? Why are they doing the things they're doing? You remind me of a video I saw just today of a guy who took his girlfriend to Chick-fil-A. It was one of those those places where you serve, fried chicken in little
Uh-huh.
baskets or things. Very cheap place, but the guy was clearly in love with the girl, and he was clearly not rich. So that's what he could afford. So he paid her lunch. So he took her there, and she was really mad at him. She said, "You think I'm not worth anything better? I mean, why can't you take me to a better restaurant or to, the more expensive restaurant?" He said, "Well, I'm poor." And she said, "No, but am I not worth something more?" So this is a clear case of, either miscommunication or misunderstanding, because for him, that's an act of affection. For him, maybe that money for him was a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe
Right.
that's the money he would use for something else. And she's not reading it that way. She's reading it as lack of interest, or that she's not worth more money than what he was spending. So if you see the two sides, if you read on the two sides, you may help them see stuff through the guy's eyes and why he was doing that. He was not being cheap. He just, that's his way of showing, affection. And that's the only way he could do it. Seeing both sides is really important. There's where you get the bigger spreads.
Yeah. Yeah. Miscommunication is so typical in a relationship because their emotions are so charged and expectations are so charged. And especially I find with Valentine's Day, you're expecting the roses. I mean, a woman is roses and dinner and probably a car to pick you up. So they get dressed up and it's everyone's.
Proposals too. Oh my
Oh,
God.
yes, yes. The last thing I think you should do on Valentine's Day is propose, in my opinion, anyway. Like,
Yes, that brings me to top ask question: is he going to, or she, going to propose? Right?
mhm.
Yes.
Expectations. Hi.
And then how big is the ring? Oh,
How
geez.
big is the diamond? Yeah.
Once I was asked a question by the girl. She found the white box hidden under the bed, in the storage, and it looks like the engagement ring, from her favorite jeweler. And she just wanted to know, is it the ring? Is it that one? Is he going to propose? And obviously, uh, she was expecting the proposal, but in the end, it turned out it was not the ring she was expecting. It was something completely different. Yeah, it was necklace from his grandmother, and she just gave him in the box she had available.
Do you guys like to read on short-term and long-term intentions? I think that's something interesting to investigate too. I mean, maybe when you have a relationship, sometimes for one part of the relationship, one person in the relationship, the short term is very different from the long term. They just want to have either fun or whatever, or somebody is in there for the long haul. Questions like, will he marry me? Will he leave his
Yeah,
wife, for example?
exactly.
That's a good one for you to work with
Yeah,
short
Yeah.
term and long term intentions. I mean, is he here just to have fun and enjoy some
I don't
time?
like to leave beyond like 6 months because so much can happen.
I agree.
Like, and with tarot, I mean, when you're doing this reading with them, you've got, uh, you know, once you're doing that reading, they can even decide they're going to stay with this person who's cheating on them. Like you have no control
yeah,
over that, nor should you, right? Nor should you. But the thing is, once they've had that reading with you, there's so many things that can take place that you're not aware of. Like that person can get a job in another week or whatever, and that changes the whole reading that you just gave because they came to you at the time where they were thinking this is
Hmm.
this is how things are. So they didn't give you the complete story because they didn't maybe know the complete story. And so reading, like to me, it's like within 3 to 6 months. I don't like to read beyond that.
So 6 would be your long term.
I would say, yeah, because that to me is more, yeah, it's more realistic.
They can have a heart attack,
yeah.
Yeah.
or I don't know.
Yes, a lot of things can happen within 6 months that were, totally unexpected, and therefore, it's like, let's deal with the current, what's happening to you right now and what your options are possibly in the next 3 months if you read further beyond that.
Would you establish 6 months also as the minimum for a person to ask the same question about someone? I'm thinking about those who, every week they come to you and ask about the same person and the same questions
Yes.
in hopes that things will change. Yeah, very, very common.
Yeah.
Would you set a date and say, well, come ask this question again in, let's say, 3 months, 4 months,
Hmm.
6 months, or because you give advice, and if they follow it, that
Yeah.
is, you have to see if it works or not. If what changed as well. You have to see if things took a different turn. I think 3 months is a good period for that, for coming back and asking the same question.
Sometimes, what I do is I sometimes ask the question when this person will be ready to see the reality of the situation, or when they will be ready for the relationship. Next one.
Well, and the other thing is, if the couple's been together for a very long time, I would say in this case, I had a woman friend coming to see me, and I mean, the relationship isn't changing. It's the only thing that can change is if she wants to change, because he's not going to change. Because that when you have that, like it's like, okay, here's the scenario, and it's like, well, the only person that's going to change in this is yourself, meaning that person. So that's where I feel like, oh, until they have shown me something to say, well, like, and I think Greg has said in another one, well, what's changed? Has anything changed from the last time you came to see me? That's the obvious question.
Yeah.
And what if you say, like, for example, if they ask a question, am I going to get caught for cheating? And then you say, that's why I agree with the short term questions, 3 to 6 months, year maximum. Because what if you say, no, no, you're not going to get caught? And then they get too complacent and they're not cautious and then they get caught. I also believe that you need to be careful what you tell them as well. So if you tell them, you need to go with caution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it's like, well, if you're cheating, you're lying, right? You're lying,
Mm-hmm.
and you're lying also, they're also lying to themselves. So, I mean, it's like, well, how can this be a fair relationship, right? I mean, I don't want to get into lecturing the person for sure, because it's their choice. That they're doing this, but maybe I may explore, okay, why do you cheat? What's not happening in your relationship? That may be the other question. What is not happening? What needs to happen to more explain, okay, you're staying with this current person, but so why can you do to change it? Do you want to change it? And how can you change it?
That would be a very good time for a Three of Swords card to show up, because I see this as a heart-to-heart conversation.
Hmm.
The heart of the matter. What's
Mm-hmm.
going on here? What is the real deal? What's the main challenge for this relationship? But some people just don't want to face it, or they don't have the courage to discuss or check, face the challenge. Maybe it's much easier to just run.
Well, they want to be called out by that other person rather than be the one really dealing with the situation. Like, in my opinion, it's like if they want to be caught, otherwise, why? They don't want to be the one that ends the relationship. I've had it like with men, they don't want to see the woman cry. And they don't want to deal with the drama. And Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But that's what I've been told. Why don't cry, don't cry. This is what I hear.
Yeah, we don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's easier to not tell the truth, or until they don't want to be the one that makes you cry. But we're not going to fix the problem. We're not dealing with the problem, right?
Do they want to deal with the problem? I mean, I'm not their doctor. I'm no philosopher. So if they're in a relationship and start asking questions not involving to better their relationship, it's not really my business. I would try to help them and give advice. It's a pity, but yeah. But you need to give the querent or the client the answers that they're asking. So obviously they'll have a question and it'll be related around their question. It'll be built around the question that they asked.
And you know what? I while you were talking, I have cards in my hands. I was wondering if you asked the person, as Susan suggested, why are you cheating with this other person? And I just got the Ace of Cups. So clearly, in this case, the person is in love with the other person. So there's not much to be done, really. There's a serious involvement, emotional involvement, and then I would start from there. I mean, we have to know the reasons why this is happening. I would investigate on the reasons. The cheating has nothing to do with sexual adventure or boredom at home. No, they are truly in love. If for example, I had the let's say the nine of wands for the reason the person is feeling, attacked at home. They're not feeling appreciated. They have to put their defenses on. It's probably the partner complains all the time and accuses them of not doing things the way they're supposed to be done, and they're getting tired. But there's no love. It's not a card of love, the nine of wands. So I think it does depend on what you get for the reason for the cheating, because people don't cheat just because they have to. They usually have a reason. They might not even know the reason. It might not even be that clear. But basically, what we want is to make people feel happy with their lives and their relationship, right?
I try to let them walk out there with something they can use, like some useful information. Then I'm satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's gonna help them. At least that I think is gonna help them because I think I'm doing the right thing.
So, anything else to add?
Um, expect the unexpected. That's what I can say. Sometimes, as far as relationships are concerned, there's a lot of stuff that we think we know, but we really don't know. The cards are there to teach you about these things. The cards sometimes show someone mentioned here the tower. I once got the tower for not divorce, but people who were not happy with the arrangement of their apartment. The apartment was getting too small for them because they had stuff, they had books, and they had new furniture, and that feeling tight was getting on their nerves, and they started to fight.
They were like two caged animals.
Yeah, they were caged. They needed outs. They needed a bigger place. So the tower was not a divorce case. It was not a fight. It was just being constricted to a tower. They were just feeling tight in that space. So yeah, cards can have very interesting meanings, and we have to be open to that and calm the people that look at the cards and think they're completely catastrophic. And
And that's just it, Anna, like, asking that question, if you got that tower, I'm sure you asked, you know, I mean, you obviously found out the answer that
yeah,
they
that things as unusual as those, they that's pure intuition. That's not in the card. It just they feel cramped. That's what came to mind. They feel cramped. And then I said, well, where do you live? Do you live in a big house? Are you happy with your home and whatever? And then the person says, no, we live in a very tight place. And then you can, start getting more cards and asking more questions. That's why I think context is important. And there's nothing wrong asking questions from the people you're reading for.
No, and
They can
then,
help
I
you
mean,
with
then
that.
you're on
Same,
to a
yeah,
different reading of, when can they move out, which is a whole
yeah,
different
yeah,
reading.
that too.
Can they find it?
Where should they
Can they
look for
Yeah,
a
where should
nice,
they
yeah, where should they look for a nice house?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole different yeah, it's not the relationship, it's okay, let's try and help you find another living space and what your chances are. What are your finances are.
Ask a question like that and I see happy cards like cups cards and things like that. That's great. That's fine because we all want that. That's cool.
Yep.
Why I talk about when it's not so good and why I talk about that is because for me that's the hardest. It's so hard to tell people it's not going to work out
Mhm.
because people don't like it, and you can, and I think for me that's hard. How do you tell people bad news because you don't want to lie to them,
Yeah.
and then they walk off with a ump, and then they don't want to talk to you again,
Mhm.
But all you're trying to do, just trying to do, is tell them, you're going to get bitten, you're going to get hurt, or whatever, or the person's a bad person or whatever. That's the only part I struggle with. But apart from that, I would just dig and see what they're really, really asking.
And are they willing to make choices. That's what
Or
I have
willing to
found.
make changes.
Yeah, choices, changes,
Mhm.
because that's just it. The situation may not change if you don't make choices.
And what's even more complicated is accepting responsibility. Sometimes you have a person who comes in saying, well, my boyfriend is a monster, he's this, he's that. And when you read the cards, it's not the boyfriend who is the difficult person. The difficult person is the person you're reading for.
And the other
And they
person's
don't
going
see it.
crazy.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So they don't see it. I think this is one of the hardest things to do, is to make them realize that they are the ones that have to change. They are the ones that are causing the problems and not the other person. Accept responsibility too. It's one of the toughest readings to do.
Yes.
Well, like the earlier example about the person who gets her boyfriend takes her out to dinner at a very cheap place, and it's a case of, well,
Yeah,
how
something like a Chuck E. Cheese or something
yeah, and
like
it's
that.
like, well, the thought was there. He loves her, and it's a case of what are your, can you accept the person that is not necessarily going to meet those expectations of yours, but they do love you.
And maybe that's not enough. I
Yep.
mean, again, we cannot be judgmental. Maybe the person needs somebody with cash,
Yep.
and that's okay.
Yep.
I mean, but that's not the right one for her. They don't. It's not going to last because she's looking for something completely different
Yes.
than he is. So,
And 6 months, maybe he gets a job where he's getting fabulously paid,
mhm. Yeah.
and she'll have lost someone a really wonderful person in her life.
Yes.
Not that a
Yes.
relationship should be based on cash, but in my opinion anyway, but that's their decision to make.
Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and follow us. And feel free to leave a comment.